Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Lorkhon Saga Nutshell series. Ascendance is coming. What is that, you ask? That is the latest installment of the Lorkhon Saga story series. This new story is the culmination of 5 years of ideas and storytelling, and in anticipation of the series, I've decided to create a collection of Lorkhon Saga Nutshell videos that will answer all of your burning questions about the story and how the concept was born. All right. Now, in the last episode, I talked about the lore behind the series, how it came to be, how it works, what's important about it, and what makes a story a Lorkhon tale. In this episode, we are going to focus on the origin of one of those characters, Robbard Graves, who he is as a character, and the role he plays in the story. Now, just a quick spoiler warning. There will be spoilers in not only this episode, but all the episodes to come, as we will be revealing things that have happened in the story so far. If you are interested in watching the full story, rather than this recap, you might want to go back and check out the viewer's guide that you can find linked in the description below, and it will provide you with some guidance on all of the playlists on the CouchWarrior TV YouTube channel that are part of that series and the proper viewing order. All right, you've been warned. So, who is Robbard Graves? Well, we've talked about 5 fables. In the last episode, it was mentioned quite frequently. And the reason that's important is because 5 fables was the origin of Robbard Graves as a character, and also a companion character named Stax. These 2 characters came out of that series, and even though the 5 Fables series is technically not part of the Lorkhon Saga, I do include episodes from 5 Fables in the recommended viewing, just so you can get a nice character background and understand who Robbard is as a person. That definitely helps in the viewing to understand the background of this character and what his motivations are. So, Robbard Graves is basically a ranger as far as character class type would go. I would characterize him as a ranger. He fights primarily with a bow and hand axes. He is also an asshole. And I designed him that way from the very beginning. In fact, I specifically asked myself that question. What would it be like in this game to play a character who is just an asshole? And that was the genesis of Robbard Graves. He is a fighter. He's a womanizer. He's a criminal. He's a smuggler, a skooma dealer. However, he's also a very complicated individual. He is also a man who is suffering from all kinds of inadequacies, psychological issues. He is also a gifted musician. He's a man who's made many mistakes and has lots of regrets he doesn't care to admit. So I think that's part of what makes him such a rich character. So if we were to just look a little bit at the background of him, we have to start in Morthal. As the story goes, he is the eldest son of the Jarl of Morthal, who is Idgrod Ravencrone. And Idgrod, for her, Robbard was very much a problem child from the very start. And as a child, Robbard is described as being antisocial, difficult to get along with, combative, defiant, rebellious. He is all the things that would actually probably drive any parent to drink. That is Robbard Graves in a nutshell. If I could recommend for you any one video to really get a sense for who he is and something of his upbringing, I would point you to 5 Fables Episode 6, Black Barrels Part 4. That came out on April 2016, and it starts with a lengthy monologue from Robbard Graves as he's traveling, describing in some detail his childhood. Now, one of the things that that monologue also does is it touches very heavily on some of the sort of supernatural things that complicate his life. Some of the things that plague him as a boy and continue on into his adult life. Primarily, it is this idea of prophecy. Robbard Graves is prophetic. And by that, what I mean is he has visions. He has visions of the future. And these are visions that are very disturbing to him. And if you are a longtime player of Skyrim and familiar with Idgrod Ravencrone, you know that Idgrod also has something of the seer in her personality. We hear it come out in the NPC dialogue and in the quest lines. It's very clear that Idgrod is noted to be a person who has visions. Well, Robbard Graves shares this feature with his mother. However, for Robbard, especially as a child, this particular ability scared him. It frightened him terribly. And a lot of the trouble that he got into, a lot of the things he did that were considered antisocial, destructive, and the like, were things that were a direct reaction to him trying to either drown out the visions, avoid the visions, flee from the visions. We learned very early on that Robbard Graves is a heavy drinker. He has also been known to use drugs, skooma. There are several points in many of these series where he is taking skooma himself. We also hear in his monologue that even as a child, he was experimenting with strange substances, things that would help him forget about the things that he had seen. And he was very much in denial of these capabilities. However, these were capabilities that his mother tried to foster. She valued them, and he did not. So, if you really want to get a sense for who Robbard Graves is as an individual, definitely watch episode 6 of 5 Fables. You could go back a little bit as well, even watch part 3 of Black Barrels. That would give you some additional lead up to that, a sense for his personality. As far as mannerisms go, Robbard appears to be a man of few scruples and even fewer friends. At the beginning of the story, what we realize is he really only has one friend that we are aware of, and that is a man named Stax. Now, one of the things that we find out through some of those 5 Fables videos early on is how they met. And the circumstances of their meeting and becoming friends is very strange. At first, it was really just about Robbard saving Stax from a bad situation with some bandits and Stax feeling like he owed Robbard a favor. But then Stax gets sucked into Robbard's schemes for world domination, and then eventually they become fast friends as Stax begins to buy in to the vision that Robbard has for creating this vast criminal network. Robbard can be very cruel. He is acerbic. He is downright evil on occasion. But there are times when he shows shreds of humanity. We see it now and again. It's often left to the viewer to judge his actions and try to discern what type of person he really is. He seems to be driven by conflict. He has a deep and abiding hatred for his own family. He despises authority and rejects rules. And he seems to be in a constant pursuit of money. However, this can also sort of be equated pretty easily, given some of his other actions, to really being a search for happiness. So what about his origin? When did I first start thinking of him? Well, the first time that I actually mentioned him on my YouTube channel was in episode 8 of the Character Crusade podcast. You'll find that linked down below. That podcast was called The Circles of Character Conflict and was published on June 10th, 2015. That episode provides an excellent glimpse into the thought process that went into creating this character. And even better, that discussion is in the context of this concept we call the circles of character conflict, which is a wonderful tool that you can use to help to develop the personalities of the characters that you play in Skyrim. So I highly recommend you listen to that. It is definitely one of the most useful and one of the most popular episodes of our podcast because it is so helpful in crafting deep and rich characters filled with personality and great motivations. So I would highly recommend you check that out for a lot of different reasons. Then after that, we started seeing him appear in 5 Fables. And in that story, we saw in 2 time frames Robbard as a younger man and also Robbard as an older man. And then there were some flashback kind of things. So it gets a little bit muddled, but you know, if you choose to watch it from the beginning to the last episode of 5 Fables, you'll kind of get the gist of it, get the full sense of who the other characters were as well. If you'd like to just skip ahead to the Black Barrels portion of that, then you can really get a good glimpse into who Robbard is. So what is Robbard's role in the story? Robbard is never really seen to be pursuing any major quest lines of his own. He's helping others achieve their aims, or he's partnering with them. Sometimes he's a mentor, and he's even a foil sometimes. All the while, he is following his own agenda to become the ultimate kingpin of Skyrim's skooma trade. I think of Robbard not only as a character, but the glue that holds a lot of the things in the story together. Not only are the Lorkhon particles themselves a common thread across the stories, but Robbard Graves is also. Many of the characters are pulled into the larger story through their connection with Robbard. So, for example, in Rune Runner, Robbard is really the bad seed, right? Vander makes a deal with Robbard to help him raise money for a race and further advance in the Thieves Guild. Robbard takes extreme and unexpected actions on behalf of Vander without Vander's knowledge that creates all kinds of problems for Vander, gives Vander a reputation that he doesn't necessarily deserve. So if you go back, for example, and take a look at the Rune Runner playlist, you're going to find an episode in there called Graves' Mistakes. That is where we first start seeing Robbard appear, and there is actually an episode in that series that is entirely in Robbard's perspective, which is kind of fun. And we see that come back again as well in Barbarian. So Robbard appears in Twist's story as a mentor. He helps to nurse Twist back to health with the assistance of Marl and some other characters after he is poisoned by Carlia. Later on in the series, we see Robbard appear again, striking a deal with Twist to basically take over and solidify the smuggling trade into Bruma, and then ultimately having Twist enter Bruma and become a mouthpiece for Robbard and his organization inside that city. Then in Barbarian, we see Robbard appear again. This time, he appears almost as though he were some kind of senior advisor or tactician working with the team to try to figure out the best possible strategy for Eidestag to achieve his goals. This is also the point at which I introduced this concept of the Dragonborn not being one person, the Dragonborn being a team of people. And we talk about this concept of the Dragonborn covenant. And we look at those individuals who are part of that covenant as being people who have been extraordinarily gifted by the Lorkhon particles. In other words, the way that they have interfaced with those particles has given them amazing powers. One of the things that all members of this covenant have is the ability to absorb power from word walls. Not all of them are able to actually absorb power from dragons, but all of them are able to sort of read and interpret the power of word walls, thus basically giving them all shouts. And so they form a group called the Dragonborn Covenant. Robbard, in cooperation with Marl Keenlit, are really viewed to be sort of the senior level people in this group. And Robbard in particular is very much the battlefield strategist or tactician, where Marl really appears to be the scholar and the scientist. Also in Barbarian, we see at least one individual adventure from the perspective of Robbard Graves, where he takes over a skooma den and solidifies his supply lines and status as the preeminent skooma dealer in Skyrim by basically conning the Imperial army into helping him destroy his competition. He also takes great steps to help prepare Eidastog for his confrontation with Alduin, and he plays a key role in Eidastog's ultimate success. So, what does the future hold for Robbard Graves? We don't really know. But all you have to do is watch Ascendance to find out. Stay tuned for the next Nutshell episode, where we will discuss the origin and relationship of Marlavor Keenlit and Shadeling. These two are the linchpins of the story for various reasons, and we are going to dive deep into their characters and their stories in the next episode. For more information, check the description for links to the videos, podcasts, and resources mentioned in this episode. You will also find the definitive Lorkhon timeline explaining all the playlists and characters that are part of the Lorkhon Saga canon and the recommended viewing order. I'll see you in the next episode.
If I open myself to this, there will be no end to it. I can feel it. The pressure, the sheer weight of the memory Helgen holds. It's overpowering.